Okay, good afternoon. Welcome everyone to our fourth Let's Talk Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, August 24th. My name is Kayla Macera. I'm Director of School Nutrition Programs here at DESE. And Let's Talk Tuesday is an August webinar series that is geared towards helping you understand the changes in school nutrition programs related to the many active waivers that Missouri has opted into for school year 21-22, which has become for many of you. So that's very exciting. So this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our newsletters, webinars, and workshops page. And let me show you where that is. And the goal is to have it up on Friday, but if it's not up by the end of the day on Friday, it will be available the following week. Attendees have been muted upon entry, and you're not allowed to unmute yourselves during the presentation, but we will have a live Q&A session, so I'll have more information about how you can unmute yourself or ask any question in the chat. So unlike our event flyer says, you do not need to enter your email address to receive a training certificate. We've decided to simplify this, and we've published a blank certificate for you to download, fill out, and file with all your training documentation. So that can also be found on the newsletters, webinars, and workshops page. Instead, feel free to enter hellos and shout out your school district in the chat. So I wanted to show you where the certificate and resources are on the newsletters, webinars, and workshops page. So you'll see the certificate of completion is underlined. It's blank again for you to fill out, which is easy for folks who are tuning in live or watching the recordings. So you'll receive an okay. So how much where did it get cut off? I see that I muted myself. Pat, are you able to tell me where I muted myself?
I think if you just, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I think if you just start over right here on just this particular, you started getting into the top part here, but I would probably just start over.
Okay, cool. Okay, so don't know how that happened. So I wanted to show you where the certificate and resources are on the newsletters, webinars, and workshops page. So you'll see the certificate of completion is underlined, and it's blank again for you to fill out and complete, which is easy for folks who are tuning in live or watching the recordings. You will receive 1.5 hours of training for each webinar during this Let's Talk Tuesday webinar series. And I also want to show you that our application packet guidance is available on this web page. I've circled this in that orange color. And I'm bringing this up because a team of nutrition program specialists put in a great amount of effort to understand USDA guidance and create these resources for you. If you learn best visually and orally, we recorded a webinar to help you. If you learn best through written instruction, we have written guidance for you. And out of respect for the time that this team has spent on resources, I would ask for you to please view the webinar and review the written instructions before contacting our office for help. We serve nearly 700 schools in Missouri, and I think they did a fabulous job communicating these changes on how to complete application packets this year through the webinar and the application packet guidance. So we are asking that application packets for school year 21-22 operations are submitted by the end of day on Friday, September 10th. We are quickly working to open the SSO building applications for school year 21-22, which is for October 21 through June 2022 operations. So the SSO applications are currently not yet available in the 21-22 application packet, but still submit your 21-22 application packet by Friday, September 10th. We will notify you via email once the SSO building applications are available, and this won't delay or impact your ability to operate SSO. So once those SSO building applications are available, you will need to modify the school year 21-22 application packet and complete those, modify, submit again. Right. So surveys to apply or to opt into waivers for school year 21-22 are now available on our disaster COVID-19 waiver information page. And so you may apply for the waiver to allow specific meal pattern flexibility and or opt into the other meal service waivers, which are listed on the web page and the screen that you're viewing. So please view these handouts in the webinar from August 10th, that Let's Talk Tuesday, to learn more about how to complete those surveys. Okay, so today I am joined by Chad Mays, School Nutrition Program Analyst, who will be reviewing the Paid Lunch Equity, or PLE tool, Pamela Heinrich, Nutrition Program Specialist for the Southeast region, who will be reviewing the Paid Lunch Equity Exemption Form, which has been recently updated, and Ellen Reese, School Nutrition Program Manager, who will be discussing pricing, second meals, and adult meals. Thank you to Pam, Chad, and Ellen for the work you put in today, into today's webinar. So now I'll stop sharing and turn it over to Chad to get us started with the PLE tool.
Sorry, 1 second. Are you all able to see my screen here, or am I?
Yep, I see your desktop.
Desktop, okay, excellent. All right, excellent, thank you. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Again, my name is Chad Mays, Lead Nutrition Program Specialist with SE Food Nutrition Services. Today I'll be walking you through completing the Paid Lunch Equity Tool, also known as the PLE tool, for school year 2021-2022. All right, so first, is this, I'm sorry, are you able to see? I'm sorry, let me hide this here, sorry. Okay, so what is the purpose of completing the PLE tool? The purpose of completing the PLE tool is to help ensure that school food authorities, also known as SFAs, operating the National School Lunch Program, are charging enough for paid lunches or working toward charging enough for paid lunches in order to ensure sufficient funds are provided to the nonprofit school food service account and prevent SFAs from subsidizing paid lunches with the free student reimbursement. Who is required for school year 21-22 to follow PLE requirements by completing the PLE tool? All SFAs operating the National School Lunch Program during school year 21-22 are required to follow PLE requirements by completing the school year 21-22 PLE tool. Who may be exempt from following the PLE requirements for school year 21-22? On May 14th, 2021, USDA revised and issued SP 11-2021 Consolidated Appropriations Act stating any LEA with a positive or zero balance in its nonprofit school food service account as of December 31st, 2020 is exempt from the PLE pricing requirements for school year 2021-22. So if your LEA meets these requirements and you wish to apply for this exemption, you will be required to complete the DESE Food and Nutrition Services PLE exemption form, which Pam Heinrichs will be discussing in more detail in a bit. Okay, so lastly, per Child Nutrition Waiver number 97, SFAs operating SSO only during school year 21-22 do not need to follow PLE requirements for school year 21-22 and therefore are not required to complete the paid lunch equity tool. I repeat, SFAs only operating SSO during school year 21-22 do not need to follow PLE requirements for school year 21-22 and therefore are not required to complete the paid lunch equity tool. I know many of you are most likely only operating SSO during school year 21-22, so you're probably wondering why you should stay on to view the rest of this presentation. Please keep in mind, Ellen Reese will be providing information in this presentation pertaining to pricing adult meals, and hopefully also the information Pam Heinrichs and I will be providing pertaining to PLE requirements will be helpful guidance and a refresher on PLE requirements and completing the PLE tool in future school years. All right, so with that being said, let's get started on completing the PLE tool. All right, so first, I will show you how to or where to locate the tool on the DESE website. So you'll go to www.dese.mo.gov, hover over Administrators, and select Food and Nutrition Services. Then once you go to the next page, you'll select on the right-hand side, Guidance and Resources. Then select Paid Lunch Equity. Select the drop-down for school year 2021-22. And here, this is where you'll find the school year 21-22 PLE tool. And you will eventually, this should be where you'll also be able to access the PLE exemption form, which at the moment isn't on here, but should be hopefully in the near future, very near future. And Pam Heinrichs might have more information on that here a little later. So, okay, let me click on the PLE tool. And I'll enable editing. All right, so you will see the PLE tool is an Excel spreadsheet with multiple tabs. The first two tabs here, PLE guidance and instructions, will provide a lot of information that I will be discussing throughout this presentation on how to complete the PLE tool. So feel free to use those resources as well when completing the tool on your own. All right, so we'll start at the Unrounded Requirement Finder tab, which will be used to determine your school year 21-22 weighted average price requirement in step 1. In order to do so, you will need to know your unrounded price requirement for school year 2021. That's last year's PLE tool. To enter this in, you would enter that number into this cell. And so you would access, in order to get that number, you would access your last year's PLE tool, and you would go over to your Report tab, and that number that you need, this 21 or the last year's 2021 weighted average price requirement will be in box A. It'll be listed here. So, but let's say, however, if for some reason you are unable to obtain the school year 2021 unrounded price requirement from the previous year's 2021 PLE tool, then the school year 2010-11 weighted average price will need to be used, and we'll discuss that now. So in this scenario, let's say we don't have that last year's number. So we're going to start here at the again school year 2010-11 price calculator tab. And with this tab, it can be used to calculate your school year 2010-11 weighted average price. Here you will need to enter your school year 2010 pricing and sales data from the month of October 2010 for each building that was operating national school lunch program during October 2010. All right, so let's say your LEA or this LEA has two buildings operating national school lunch program, an elementary building and a middle school. Here you will enter your October 2010 number of paid student lunches that were claimed at each building into boxes 1 through 10, as well as the paid lunch price during October 2010 for each building. So let's say you claimed 875 paid student lunches during October 2010 for the elementary building, and the elementary paid lunch price was $2.10 at that time. And you claimed 529 paid student lunches for the middle school at $2.30 per paid student lunch. And you will see this calculates your school year 2010 weighted average price to be $2.18. All right, so you'll go back to your unrounded requirement finder tab. That link there will take you back, or you can just manually go back yourself, whichever one works. And sorry, okay, so you'll go back to this tab and you'll enter that dollar amount of $2.18 into the school year 2010-11 weighted average price cell here. So we'll go ahead and enter that, $2.18. All right, and you'll see the tool calculates the school year 2019-20 requirement price to the nearest cent at $3 in the price one box here. And it calculates also calculates the requirement price to the nearest cent for previous school years here. And in the yellow price two box, it calculates your school year 2021 requirement price to the nearest cent to be $3.09. Okay. So now what we'll do, now that we have the school year 2021 requirement price to the nearest cent, you will then scroll back up to step one, the step one box, and you'll enter the $3.09 into the school year 2021 unrounded price requirement peach colored cell. You will see that the tool automatically calculated the school year 21-22 weighted average price requirement to the nearest cent to be $3.18. This, as stated here, this calculation is based on adjusting the school year 2021 price requirement of $3.09 right here by this year's 2% inflation rate increase plus the 2.93% consumer price index. Now that we have calculated the school year 21-22 weighted average price requirement, we will proceed to the school year 21-22 price calculator tab. As you can see here, the data from the unrounded requirement finder tab is automatically pulled into the school year 2021 weighted average price requirement section at the top. It shows again that the requirement price to the nearest cent is $3.18. It also has calculated for us the optional price requirement rounded down to the nearest 5 cents, which is $3.15. Below, you will see the school year 2021 weighted average price calculator tool. Here you will need to enter your paid lunch sales and pricing data from October 2020 for each of your buildings in order to determine your school year 2021 weighted average price. Please note, SFAs that do not have pricing and sales data from October 2020 can use October 2019 pricing and sales data. This is a flexibility allowed by USDA for the school year 21-22 PLE tool. Because many SFAs were operating SSO during October 2020 and therefore do not have pricing sales data due to reimbursable meals being served free at that time. In this example, we'll say this SFA does have October 2020 data. So let's say during October 2020, the elementary building claimed 962 reimbursable paid lunches and we're charging $2.80. Oops. Sorry, $2.80 per paid lunch. And the middle school claimed $610, or sorry, 610 reimbursable paid lunches, and we're charging $3 per paid lunch. All right, you will see this calculates my school year 2020-21 weighted average price to be $2.88. Please note, if the school year 2021 weighted average price was equal to or above the target price of $3.18, as it describes here, then you are compliant with PLE requirements for school year 21-22. The target price of $3.18, it is the difference between the National School Lunch Program free and paid reimbursement rates from last year, from school year 2021. However, in this scenario, the school year 2021 weighted average price is $2.88 and therefore does not meet the $3.18 target price. Therefore, we will continue to scroll down on the same tab. And the tool calculates any amounts necessary to meet the school year 21-22 weighted average price requirements and any amounts carried forward to school year 2022-2023. Here you will see the tool has calculated the total price increase for school year 21-22 as being 27 cents for this scenario. The required price increase with the 10-cent cap section here shows the required weighted average price the SFA must attain for school year 21-22 to be in compliance with the PLE tool is $2.98. This is calculated by adding the October school year 21-22 weighted average price plus the figure from the total price increase for school year 21-22 box here. However, again, there is a 10-cent cap, which is why the total required price increase for school year 21-22 is only $2.98 versus $3.15. There's a 10-cent cap because USDA does not require SFAs to increase their weighted average paid lunch price more than 10 cents each school year. Here you will also see the remaining increase carried forward to school year 22-23 to be 17 cents. You also see the next box for remaining credit carried forward to school year 22-23. In this example, we do not have a credit carried forward, which is obviously, which is why the blank is only showing, sorry, the box is only showing a dash, it's blank. All right, so at this point, the SFA has three options. Option one, the SFA can choose to increase their paid lunch prices to meet the required price increase with the 10-cent cap of $2.98. Or option two, the SFA can choose to not increase their paid lunch prices and instead transfer non-federal funds to the nonprofit school food service account for school year 2021-22. Then option three, the SFA can choose to increase their paid lunch prices and transfer non-federal funds for the difference to the nonprofit school food service account for school year 21-22. If the SFA chooses option one, to increase the paid lunch prices to meet the required price increase with 10-cent cap to be $2.98, the SFA can utilize the step 3 optional tool, pricing estimation calculator, which is at the bottom here. This tool is used to determine how to apply the increase to each building price point in order to meet the minimum weighted average price of $2.98. With this tool, you'll use the student paid lunch counts for October 2020 or October 2019 if needed, with each student meal price for each building into this tool. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the numbers from October 2020 into that tool. And so here, here's where you can play around by changing the different price points until basically you reach the a weighted average price that meets the requirement. But let's say in this scenario, we've decided to raise each price point 10 cents. So we're going to change the $2.80 to $2.90. And we're going to change the $3 to $3.10. And you'll see that it calculates our weighted average price as $2.98, which meets the required price increase for school year 21-22 with 10-cent cap at $2.98. All right, so in this scenario, since we have decided to increase the paid lunch prices to meet the weighted average price increase with the 10-cent cap of $2.98, we will then go to the school year 21-22 report tab. You can click here, or you can just go over manually. So either one. All right, so here you will see it lists in box A the school year 21-22 weighted average price requirement. This is the price that will be entered into the school year 22-23 PLE tool to determine the school year 22-23 weighted average price requirements when that PLE tool is released by USDA for next school year. All right, so just below that, we will select the drop-down box to specify which method we are using, which will, in this scenario, will be increase school year 21-22 average weighted price. You'll then scroll down to the average weighted price adjustment section. Here, it will show any remaining increase or remaining credit carried forward to school year 22-23. In this example, you'll see we only have a remaining increase carried forward, which is 17 cents. In the peach color box here, you will enter the new average weighted price for school year 21-22. Since we will be increasing the prices to make the school year 21-22 weighted average price to be $2.98, we will enter that amount here. All right, so now for this scenario, for the first scenario we have, you have completed the school year 21-22 PLE tool, and you will want to make sure to save this PLE tool as a record of how you chose to meet the PLE tool requirement for school year 21-22. All right, so I'm going to erase this information for now because we're going to go into a new scenario. All right, so now we're going to discuss option 2. Let's say your SFA does not want to raise the paid lunch prices for school year 21-22. In this case, the SFA can choose to transfer non-federal funds to the nonprofit school food service account for school year 21-22 in lieu of raising the paid lunch prices. If this is the action the SFA has decided to take, then we will utilize the school year 21-22 non-federal calculator tab, just here. And we'll use this tab in order to determine the amount of non-federal funds the SFA will need to transfer to the nonprofit school food service account. Here you will see at the top, it again shows us the school year 21-22 weighted average price requirement. And again, you'll see the optional price rounded down to the nearest 5 cents is $3.15. All right, so we will first go to the current weighted average price section, where it is requesting for us to enter the school year 2021 weighted average price. All right, so this tool is designed to, it's designed so that this cell here is a protected cell, and it requires you to actually click on the link here to enter your school year 2021 pricing and sales data. And after doing so, the tool will then auto-populate this cell with the current weighted average price. So we'll go ahead and click on this link, which, as you can see, takes us over to the school year 2021 price calculator tab. Again, here we'll enter the most recent paid lunch pricing and sales data for each building from October 2020. Again, as a reminder, if your SFA does not have data from October 2020, then you can use your data from October 2019 for this. In our scenario, we did have data from October 2020, so we'll be entering that information. Again, there were 962 paid lunches claimed at $2.80 per paid student lunch at the elementary school in October 2020, and there were 610 paid lunches claimed at $3 per paid lunch at the middle school during October 2020. And again, gives us, as you see, the $2.88 as the school year 21-22 weighted average price. So now we can click here to go back to the non-federal calculator tab. All right, so now you'll see that the weighted average paid price for school year 21-22 of $2.88 has been entered into this section of the tab. We'll scroll down just a bit here, and we're going to be looking now at the, if you see the non-federal source contribution calculator section. Here we will enter in the peach box, we'll enter the total paid lunch count for all paid lunch prices during school year 2019-20, which in this example, we're going to say it was 12,815 total paid lunches claimed for school year 2019-20. All right, and so you're going to see that the tool multiplied the 12,815 by 27 cents, which is the difference between the school year 2021 weighted average price of $2.88 and the school year 21-22 rounded weighted average price requirement of $3.15. And that total comes out to be $3,460.05. We'll move on down to the next section. If you had previously contributed non-federal funds designated specifically to cover paid lunch equity requirements anytime in the past from school year 2011-12 all the way through school year 2020-21 and had remaining credit carried forward, then you would enter that amount in this peach box here. However, in this example, we did not have any previous contributed federal funds for paid lunch equity carried forward. Therefore, we will leave this box blank. All right, next you will see it carried the $3,460.05 down to the annual non-federal source contribution requirement for school year 21-22 box. This is the total required non-federal source contribution amount. However, again, USDA has a 10-cent cap in regards to the maximum they will require you to raise your paid lunch prices, and that 10-cent cap also applies to the requirement of non-federal funds you are required to transfer. Therefore, as long as your non-federal source contribution meets the school year 21-22 annual non-federal source contribution with 10-cent cap amount, which you'll see here is $1,281.50. In this example, as long as the SFA transfers non-federal funds to meet that amount, then the SFA will be in compliance with the PLE tool. However, you are free to contribute more non-federal funds to meet the $3,460.05 requirement if you wish to do so. And you'll see below, it shows the remaining annual non-federal source contribution carried forward to school year 22-23 in this scenario is $2,178.55. That is the amount that will be carried forward if you plan to only contribute non-federal funds for the minimum source contribution requirement with a 10-cent cap amount, which again is $1,281.50. Okay, so to finalize this scenario, we will move over to the 21-22 report tab. We can click that link there. Again, here we will select the method we are using in this scenario to ensure sufficient funds are provided for paid lunches for school year 21-22. And in this scenario, we'll select the drop-down box and select the contribute non-federal sources for school year 2021-2022 option. We'll then scroll down to the non-federal source contribution section. Here it will show any remaining non-federal source contribution carried forward to school year 22-23 in box C, and any remaining credit carried forward to school year 22-23 in box D. Again, since we are only contributing funds for the minimum required amount with a 10-cent cap, you'll see that we have an amount of $2,178.55 remaining and being carried over into the next school year. And we also, you'll see we have no remaining credit carried forward to school year 22-23. So to finalize this scenario, you'll enter in the amount of non-federal source contributions for school year 21-22 in this peach box. So we're going to enter in the required amount with a 10-cent cap of $1,281.50 here. All right, so in this scenario, basically in this scenario, you've completed the school year 21-22 PLE tool. And again, you'll always want to make sure to save this PLE tool as a record of how you chose to meet the PLE tool requirement for school year 21-22. All right, again, so I'm going to erase that information because we have one last scenario to discuss. All right, so now we're going to discuss our, again, our final scenario, option 3, the split calculator. This option is for those SFAs wishing to split their requirement by both raising student paid lunch prices and contributing non-federal sources. If this is the action the SFA has decided to take, we will utilize the school year 21-22 split calculator tab for the calculations. And as you can see, I'm already at the split calculator tab. Here you will go to see, or I'm sorry, here you will see at the top, it again shows us the school year 21-22 weighted average price requirement. And again, you'll see the optional price requirement rounded down to the nearest 5 cents is $3.15. We'll first scroll down in order to again calculate our school year 2021 weighted average price by entering our paid lunch pricing and sales data from October 2020. And again, if you do not have the October 2020 data, you can use data from October 2019. So to save us some time, we've already done these numbers, so I'm going to just go back to this calculator tab, not that one, I'm sorry, the price calculator tab. And I'm just going to copy those numbers and paste them in because that's going to save us a little bit of time here. So, and they're the same numbers. So split calculator tab, paste them in there. And again, you'll see it gives us the school year 2021 weighted average price to be $2.88. And you'll also show, you'll also see that it shows the total price increase amount for school year 21-22 is 27 cents. And the required price increase for school year 21-22 with the 10-cent cap is $2.98. All right, now we'll continue to scroll down to the section where it asks us to enter our new weighted average price increase for school year 21-22. In order to determine how we plan to increase our paid lunch prices and determine the new weighted average price increase for school year 21-22, we can scroll down until we get to the optional pricing estimation calculator tool. Here again, we can play around with the paid lunch prices for each building to determine the price increase we plan to make and the new weighted average price increase amount. So again, we'll go ahead and copy and paste our October 2020 pricing and sales data from above here. All right, so as we mentioned earlier, if we increase the price points, each price point 10 cents, it brings the weighted average price amount up to meet the required price increase for school year 21-22 with 10-cent cap amount, which was $2.98. However, in this example, let's say that the SFA only wants, they don't want to raise their each price 10 cents, but instead they only want to raise their paid lunch prices 5 cents each and then contribute non-federal funds for the difference. So we'll go ahead, if that's the scenario, we'll go ahead and, I changed this from 280 to 285. And this from $3 to $3.05. All right, so you'll see that the tool has calculated our weighted average price to be $2.93 if we're only increasing each price point by 5 cents. All right, so we'll scroll back up and enter that amount as our new price increase in this peach box here. So $2.93. All right, so now we'll go down to the non-federal source contribution calculator section. You'll see it shows the total remaining required price increase to be 22 cents, which is the difference between our planned school year 2021 weighted average price increase of $2.93 and the school year 21-22 rounded down weighted average price requirement of $3.15. Right, so going back, here we will enter the total paid lunch count for school year 19-20. And again, in this example, it was 12,815 total paid reimbursable lunches. The tool multiplies the 12,815 by the 22 cents remaining required price increase, which comes out to be $2,819.30. Again, if you had previously contributed non-federal funds designated specifically to cover paid lunch equity requirements anytime in the past from school year 2011 and 12 to all the way through school year 2020-21 and had remaining credit carried forward, you would enter that amount in this peach box. Again, however, in this example, we did not have any previous contributed federal funds for paid lunch equity carried forward. Therefore, we will leave this box blank. We will leave this box blank. All right, so next, you will see it carried the $2,819.30 down to the annual non-federal source contribution requirement for school year 21-22 box. This is the total required non-federal source contribution amount. However, again, as we discussed in the previous scenarios, USDA has a 10-cent cap in regards to the maximum they will require you to raise your paid lunch prices. And that 10-cent cap also applies to the requirement of total non-federal funds you are required to transfer. Therefore, again, as long as your non-federal source contribution meets the school year 21-22 annual non-federal source contribution with 10-cent cap amount, which you'll see here is $640.75, which is less than the required amount earlier when we were discussing the non-federal calculator tab, because in this scenario, the SFA has also indicated they are raising paid lunch prices 5 cents each. Okay, so it calculates that into that as well. So in this example, as long as the SFA transfers non-federal funds to meet the amount of $640.75 and also increases each of their price points 5 cents, then the SFA will be in compliance with the PLE tool. All right, lastly, to finalize this last scenario, we will move over to the school year 21-22 report tab. And again, we will select the method we are using in this scenario to ensure sufficient funds are provided for paid lunches for school year 21-22, which in this scenario will be the both option, indicating that the SFA is both raising the school year 21-22 weighted average price and transferring non-federal funds. We'll then scroll all the way down here to the bottom to the split calculation section. Here it will again show any remaining non-federal source contribution carried forward to school year 22-23 in box E, and any remaining credit carried forward to school year 22-23 in box F. You will now enter the amount of non-federal source contributions for school year 21-22 and the new weighted average price for school year 21-22. As we previously discussed, in this example, the SFA has decided to raise each price point 5 cents for school year 21-22, which makes the new weighted average price to be $2.93. So we'll go ahead and enter my $2.93 there as our new weighted average price. And the SFA has decided to contribute non-federal funds for the minimum required amount with the 10-cent cap of $640.75. Okay, so after doing that for this last scenario, you have completed the school year 21-22 PLE tool. And again, you will want to always make sure to save your PLE tool as a record of how you chose to meet the PLE tool requirement for school year 21-22. So I really appreciate your time, and now I'm going to pass it on to Pam Heimrichs, who will be discussing the school year 21-22 PLE exemption form. And again, thank you everyone. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. If I can figure out how to do that. Oops. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay, it's all yours, Pam.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me okay? There we go.
We can hear you.
Okay. And share my screen. Okay. Now, do you see my exemption? This is different for me. Thank you.
Yeah,
You see
we
my
can
screen okay?
Yeah, I can see your PowerPoint.
Okay.
Good job.
Whew. I don't show you everything now. Okay, hello and welcome. My name is Pamela Heinrichs, as you know, and I am the nutrition program specialist for the Southwest region. Today, I will be going over the exemption from paid lunch equity form to highlight the changes that have been made to the form this year. Even though you may not need to complete the form for the current year, these changes will affect subsequent year's forms. You will see some duplications in the information Chad presented, and this presentation is this slide presentation will be available as a hard copy form as a standalone guide as well. Here again, as Chad mentioned earlier, is the Appropriations Act that gives any LEA with a positive or zero balance in its nonprofit school food service account as of December 31st, 2020, and exempt from the PLE pricing requirements found at 7 DFR 210.14 for school year 2021-22. Also, LEAs operating, very touchy. Pardon me. Also, LEAs operating seamless summer option only during school year 21-22 do not need to follow PLE requirements for the school year 21-22 per child nutrition waiver number 97. Nationwide waiver to provide flexibility for school meals programs, administering reviews of school food authorities operating only the seamless summer option in school year 2021-22. The exemption, I didn't touch you. Excuse me. The exemption from paid lunch equity requirement form is located on the DESE FNS website under guidance and resources. This year's is still being added and should be available shortly. It'll be found in the same place where you found the paid lunch equity tool that Chad was referring to. Both the paid lunch equity tool and the exemption from paid lunch equity requirement form is located here. It's important to note you must use the tool or form corresponding to the correct year. Let's take a look at the updates made to the PLE exemption form. The highlighted section in the instructions has been added to clarify that you will receive a copy of your PLE exemption form that has been signed to show that the form has been accepted for the exemption. If there are questions or concerns, you will be contacted for additional information before it can be accepted. Please note this is not approval of the content of the school food service account. Sorry, I just very touchy. There. Slide on right there, don't touch. On line 1 of the form, it asks for the beginning balance. This was a common mistake people made on this form. So an explanation as to where to find the needed balance was added. Please also note that this is the only information from the financial report in DESE web applications to be used on this form. Everything else will come from your school food account records. Please read the categories for the revenues carefully as they have changed. This will be probably the main change of this form. This was to align with the financial report. So the categories are different. Also know that these figures come from the school financial records for the school food service account, not from the DESE web applications financial report. The PLE exemption is only looking at August through December, not the entire school year, whereas the DESE web applications financial report looks at an entire school year. On this side, I have put just the old categories compared to the new categories of revenue, so you can see the differences side by side. The new categories now better align with the DESE FNS financial report. The expenditure section did not have any updates. On the adjustment to balance section, a reminder was added that you need to save your documentation supporting any adjustments that are made to the balance, and that only non-federal funds can be used for these adjustments. Then finally, a state representative signature date line has been added so that once your form has been accepted, it will be signed and dated, and a copy will be sent back to you for your records. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to contact our office at any time at the contact information on the slide. Thank you. Now I'll send it back to Kayla.
Thanks, Pam. And if you, once you finish sharing your screen, I'll actually pass it over to Ellen to talk about pricing second meals and adult meals.
Well, okay, I lost my screen.
I think I might be able to take it from you here, Pam. Okay, can you all hear me and see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, start my PowerPoint here. Okay, I'm Ellen Reese. I'm a school nutrition program manager, and I'll be discussing second meals and pricing adult meals. So first we'll start out talking about second meals. If you were operating the Summer Food Service Program, or SFSP, last year through the Department of Health and Senior Services, you might be aware that in that program, it's allowable to claim a certain percentage of second meals, but the SFSP regulations are different than Seamless Summer Option. So if you're switching to Seamless Summer Option now, you'll need to follow the regular NSLP requirements. And that means that Seamless Summer Option sites cannot claim second lunches or snacks for reimbursement. You are still allowed to sell second lunches as a la carte or as non-program food, but you're not allowed to claim them. So I have those regulations referenced there. Breakfast is a little different for SSO though. All SSO sites must plan for and prepare one meal per child per meal service. However, USDA Food and Nutrition Services recognizes that fluctuation in participation at breakfast makes it difficult to precisely estimate the number of meals needed. And as a result of that, the USDA allows SSO sites to offer eligible children a second breakfast and claim it for reimbursement. So that's not planned meals, that's just for using leftovers. And in order to do that, you must follow these stipulations listed here. All SSO sites must plan for and prepare breakfast on the basis of participation trends with the objective of providing one breakfast per child per day. Second breakfasts that are claimed must be excess meals that were not planned and would otherwise have been wasted. And production and participation records shall be maintained to demonstrate the LEA was only intending to provide one breakfast per child per day. And the number of breakfasts claimed cannot be more than the number of enrolled students. So if you'd like more information on that, there's the references there. And you also feel free to contact us at our office if you have more questions on that. Next, I wanted to briefly discuss how to price second meals, since we have received some questions on this. So second meals are considered non-program food, so they must meet non-program food revenue requirements. The paid lunch equity tool is not used to price non-program food. It could help you get a good starting point, but you'll need to use the non-program food revenue tool to make sure that your second meals are priced correctly. We have two versions of the non-program food revenue tool that you can choose to use. We have a 5-day tool and a tool for a longer period of time, and these are available on our website under guidance and resources, and then it will say non-program food. I'm not going to be going through the non-program food revenue tool today, but we do have webinars already on our website that walk you through how to complete each of those tools if you're not familiar with them. And they're on our website under newsletters, webinars, and workshops, and they're under the 2019 summer workshops section. Okay, so now we'll go to talking about pricing adult meals. We'll first discuss pricing adult lunches for those operating the regular national school lunch program. So for normal operation, there are 3 options to price adult lunches. The first option is for pricing schools. And for that, you take the highest paid student price, plus the value of donated foods, and then plus the paid reimbursement. And you add those all together to get your adult lunch price. The second option is for non-pricing schools, but that could also be used for pricing schools. Non-pricing meaning like CEP or Provision 2 schools. But again, not, pricing schools could use that too. And it is the free reimbursement rate plus the value of USDA donated foods, and that's your adult lunch price. And then the final option is to calculate the actual per lunch cost and including the value of the USDA donated foods. So if you choose to calculate the actual full cost, the calculation of the cost should be based on the full cost of preparing the meal. So including the food, including any supplies, labor, any other costs paid for by the food service account that go into that meal. So you also must include the value of the USDA donated foods. And then you also need to make sure when you're calculating this to use the cost of the most expensive meal or to use a weighted average cost of the meals that you serve. So that is take into consideration that adults might eat more often on days when it's a higher cost lunch than on days when it's a low cost lunch. So take that weighted average according to adult participation or price out your most costly meal, and then you know you're covered that way. It can get a little complicated pretty quickly. So generally we recommend to use either the option 1 or option 2 to price the meals. And then this is a minimum charge you're required. You can always charge more for the meals if that works better for your program. So then next we'll talk about if you are operating Seamless Summer Option this year, how to price adult meals. So if you're operating Seamless Summer Option, there are 3 options for pricing adult meals. The first option is the actual cost of the meal that we just talked about for regular NSLP. So if you're doing this, make sure to include the value of donated foods, include your other costs of preparing that meal, like supplies and labor. And actually this year, this is the preferred, I got a little sign there. This is the preferred method to use this year, just because of rising costs, uncertainty of food costs this year. If you really want to make sure you're covering the cost of the meal, then actually costing it out is the preferred method. Your second option, though, is to use the SFSP reimbursement rate, which is what you'll be receiving if you're operating SSO this year. And so you take the SFSP reimbursement rate, add the value of donated foods, and that equals your adult lunch price. So in the absence of costing out, if you don't have cost data or it's hard to get the cost data to cost out your meal. This is the encouraged method if you're not going to do the cost. But you do have the last option of this option 3, which is the NSLP free reimbursement rate plus the value of donated foods. So in this option, you can use the NSLP rate, even though you're receiving the SFSP rate, just to price out your adult meals. So this meets regulations, even though it's not the preferred method, it's still acceptable for you to use that. So that's the latest information we know from our USDA regional office. As of this morning we got some updated information, and that's what I presented today. We have heard that the national office is going to be providing some more guidance on adult meals. So when we receive that, we'll send that on to you. But this is what they've passed on to us at this point. Okay, so these are the 21-22 reimbursement rates that you'll use when you're calculating your meal prices. And these are also on our website under reimbursement rates. So then we'll go ahead and look at an example here. In addition to using the actual per lunch cost, these are the options for calculating the lunch price. And so to be compliant, we just ask that you charge at least the lower amount. So I've entered some example numbers here. In this example, option 2 comes out to be $4.72, which the SFSP reimbursement rate, that's set the same for everyone. The value of donated foods, that's the same across the board. So this option will calculate the same for every LEA. So that's $4.72. So that's the encouraged calculation, is to charge $4.72 for adult meals this year. And then the other option in this case, it calculated to be $4.15. So in this example, it would be acceptable to charge the $4.15, but encouraged to charge the $4.72. And just take into account the food costs this year, and also keep in mind the health of your nonprofit food service account. So when trying to decide, think about the cost to produce a meal this year probably increased and may have increased significantly due to increased packaging. There's a lot more prepackaged items that are higher cost, and then increases in prices just due to supply chain issues and increased labor expenses. So this year, the costs of your meals are probably higher because of a lot of factors. So you might need to charge more for adult meals in order to cover those costs. Also take into account your nonprofit food service account. Is your account in the negative? If it's in the negative, then you should consider charging the higher price. If you have a reserve of funds, then maybe you are fine to charge the lower amount. And then also keep in mind that the adult price may be covered by the adult payment, or the school may use non-federal funds, or a combination. So if the school wants to subsidize this cost, so you're not charging teachers, almost $5 this year, they could do that. Say charge the teachers $3.72, and then the school provides another $1 for every lunch that's served. So you have some options that way too. And okay, so that's for lunches. And for breakfasts, we don't have a required price of calculation. So instead, for breakfast, it's recommended. And what's recommended for breakfast is charging at least the free reimbursement rate. So this year, the free reimbursement for severe needs schools is $2.35. For non-severe needs schools, it's $1.97. And for the seamless summer option, which uses the SFSP reimbursement rate, this year it is $247. So those are the recommended breakfast prices. On our website, we will have adult meal pricing worksheets that you can use to calculate your adult meal prices. They'll just go through the calculations that we talked about today. They'll be posted under guidance and resources, and then adult meal prices. As I said, we got some kind of some last minute updates on guidance this morning. So those aren't posted yet, but we'll plan to have those updated pricing sheets hopefully by the end of the week. And then I also wanted to mention that food service employees may be given meals at no charge, and the cost of their meal can come from the food service account. So their meals cannot be claimed for reimbursement, but they can be provided a free meal. My understanding, or as I heard from a couple schools, that it sounded like if you were operating the SFSP, you were allowed to provide free meals to school employees, including teachers. But that's different with Seamless Summer Option. Under the Seamless Summer Option, only those directly involved in the school nutrition programs can be furnished a meal at no charge and attributed to the food service account. So if the LEA would like to use their non-federal funds to pay for teachers' meals, they can do that, but the food service account needs to be provided that money if the LEA chooses to do that. And then just to wrap up, I wanted to mention that you do need to be recording the adult meals that you serve at the point of service. So these need to be recorded separately from student meals since they're not reimbursable. And if you have a computerized point of service system that you use where you can enter your adult meals, that's a great way to do it. If you have a roster or a tally sheet, you'll need to make sure that you have a place on that roster or on that tally sheet to record adult meals, or if you have a separate sheet to record adult meals, that works as well. We do have a sample tally sheet, meal count sheet that you can use. It's on our website under school year 2021-22 resources, and under the Feeding Through Seamless Summer Option resources, and it has a spot on there to tally the adult meals as well as the student meals. So that's all I have for you today, and so I'll turn it back over to Kayla.
Thanks, Ellen. Okay, so let me get set up for a Q&A session. I think I'm all set up. So thanks, Chad, Pam, and Ellen. We'll now transition into a Q&A session. And before we start that, I'd like to go through how it works if anyone's new on Zoom and haven't listened to our other Let's Talk Tuesdays. So the first way you can submit a question is verbally. So I've adjusted the meeting settings and you are allowed to unmute yourself. So I just ask, though, that you use the reactions button at the bottom of your Zoom window screen and raise your hand. And so once I see your hand raised, I'll call on you, you unmute yourself and ask your question, and then you'll just click that raise hand button again to lower your hand. The second way you can ask a question is through the chat box, which I've seen come through throughout the presentations today. So we'll go through both of those. We'll kind of volley between the two. And so let's get started with the Q&A. And I'll start with a verbal question. We have a hand raised from John French. go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I had to do it both on the phone and on the screen. So again, and you're getting some of these comments in there. Obviously, school has started for most of us. I'm not sure how somebody started the 16th because I thought the 20th was the absolute first day we could start, or the 23rd. But so most schools throughout the state started today, or yesterday, and so our boards have already acted on. I called FNS and talked to my person who approves things, and I was told that we did not need to do the PLE because we were doing seamless summer option. And so essentially we established our rates, including our adult meals, at the August board meeting. So am I going to be, I guess, are we, those districts that have done that, going to be forced to go back to our boards and ask them to change that to meet these new guidelines for the adult meals? What we've had before was always in line, but obviously these rates are higher, so that's probably not going to make them be in line.
Right, right. And we recognize that this guidance has come really late from USDA. You'll be forced to raise your adult meal prices if it's found on an administrative review. I would recommend revisiting these equations to see if, and revisiting your, how much packaging, like what Ellen was talking about, how much cost it is causing your school for meals this year, to see that if it is indeed covering those meals. Ellen, would you like to add anything for that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we were obviously we were hoping for something a little easier, a little less harsh than $472 to be charging your adults. So the best we can say with where we're at is look at the cost of your meal. Maybe your costs aren't going to be that high, so do your best that way. If we do come on review and you put in the effort to do that, we'll take that. So you might start there, and maybe what you're charging for your adults will be okay with that. That's
so I guess the follow-up question then is, so if we continue with something and it doesn't meet the calculations when that finding would happen, is that going to be a situation where the district owes that money and has to back pay, or would it be a correction from that point forward? Because I can, my board's going to flip out if I tell them we have to charge that much. Our teachers already feel like they've gotten the short end of the stick throughout this entire thing, and now we're going to jack up their lunches to $5 too. For I just don't see it going well.
Yeah. So if you look at it now, what you've already set, like since we didn't give you guidance, we don't expect things to just all of a sudden you're going to be in compliance today. So if we see that you've gone and costed out that meal and moved forward with whatever changes, then you'll be fine from that point on. What we would do on a review if we had a finding is you'd owe that money to the food service account. So it's not anything you're going to give back to DESE. It's still in your school. It's just, your non-federal funds going to cover the go back to help pay for food service costs, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I follow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Right. Let's call on, well, John, do you have another question?
No, I'm good. Sorry.
Okay. we'll move to Stephanie York, Lowendale.
Hi, thank you. So we have a food service management company and we pay a per meal rate. So would that be considered our cost?
Yeah, if you have a flat rate for a fixed price and they are reimbursing you the donated foods, then the cost of your meal is that fixed price. So if you're charging that much or more, you're fine there.
Okay, but they do give us credits on our invoices for the donated foods. So how does that work?
Yeah, so they're crediting that back. So it's not, they're crediting all of the donated foods that you're using. So you can just use that set price that they're charging for the adult meals if they are, since it sounds like they are crediting back your donated foods.
Fixed price food service management companies, schools can just use the fixed price that they're being charged.
Yes,
And then
that is
that
the
is-
cost you're paying for that meal. Mhm.
And is that the same for breakfast as well? Or does breakfast need to be the reimbursement rate?
So breakfast is actually just a suggestion on our end to use the reimbursement rate. So you can really charge whatever you want for breakfast and still be okay. You won't have any findings there. That is the cost of your breakfast. So it makes total sense to just charge what you're paying for it. That's fine. You're certainly allowed to charge more and make a little more money from the adult meals. That's fine too.
Okay, one more twist in the scenario. Our fixed price per meal is less than the reimbursement rate.
That's fine. Yeah, because that's your cost. So it's still, to us, you're covering the cost of that meal. So if you're charging, if you're covering that fixed price, you are covering the cost. So that's fine.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Right. I'm gonna move into a chat question real quick. So a question from Deanna Lewis. It's about the paid lunch equity tool. She says, I have never completed this form before. Someone else has, but how does this work if the amount of meals served in 2010-11 aren't available?
Hey, Kayla, I'd be happy to answer these. I kind of went through all these and read the different PLE questions specific to PLE questions. And so I can go through those real quick and knock those out. There was one question I'll leave for last because I'm not 100% sure I know the answer to that. So I might need a little bit of assistance from my coworkers potentially, but we'll see. All right, so for Deanna's situation, I mean, ideally, I would, the person who has been doing your PLE tool over the years, or should ideally have the PLE tool saved, and so you'd be using the number from the last PLE tool that was completed. However, if that's not the scenario, you don't have access to those tools for some reason, and you needed to use your 2010-11 pricing and sales data, then I would check your student information system. Ideally, I would think that would save that information. If not, you can contact your nutrition program specialist, and they should be able to give you that information based on the claims that you submitted back then in October of 2010. So hope that answers that question. Ben Hubner had a question. That's the one that I'm gonna leave for last, if that's okay. Let's see. Someone asked if I could show where the Pay Lunch Equity Tool is located again on our website, and so I can do that. I'll just have to do a screen share real quick. Can you all see that, or can you see this, Kayla? My screen?
Yeah, I can see that. Mhm.
Okay, so you go to our DESE website, which again is dese.mo.gov. Hover over Administrators. Click on Food and Nutrition Services. Takes a minute to get there for some reason. Maybe it's just my internet. And then to the right-hand side, there you click on guidance and resources. And then to the left, you click on paid lunch equity. And so it'll be under this, well, you've got all your past ones here down to, well, goes pretty far, but yeah, your most recent one is right here. And that, again, I believe is where the exemption, pay lunch exemption form will be located too, once we get that uploaded there. Okay, and let me take a look again here at our questions. If I can find myself here. Chat, here we go. I think the only one that was left was from Ben. Oh, I know, John, you had asked, or you spoke and you'd asked about, and I'll just again clarify this. So if you're doing only SSO for the school year, for this school year 21-22, if you're only doing SSO, then you're not required to complete the PLE tool. So hopefully, I hope that is clear to everyone. Okay, so the last one here, again, Ellen or Kayla might need some help with you on this. But so the question from Ben is, what do we do if our first year of operation was the 1920 school year? So would I be safe to say that Ben could take his 1920 school year numbers and plug them into this this pricing estimation calculator to determine his weighted average price, and then shoot from that weighted average price to where he should be, well, to where the ideal target price is at $3.18? Any advice?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if I follow. So what he needs to do is take the, when you started in 2019-20, you should have come in at the equity price at that time, and then increased from there, which it's going to be either 10 cents or the at equity price, whichever's lower. And it's been less than 10 cents each year, so you should be at $3.18 this year. We can, if you want to call our office, we can help you get those numbers entered into your tool correctly, but you would have used at equity price on the unrounded requirement finder. I don't know if that quite makes sense. So right, yeah, so right there, you could put 309 in, because that was last year's at equity price. And then you'll be 318 this year. And then it'll keep going from there. So.
Okay, excellent. I hope that answers his question. If not, again, if you want to give your nutrition program specialist or one of us a call at DESE, we can show you how to complete the tool for your scenario. And since I'm already screen sharing here, I did see someone asked where the different reimbursement rates are located on our website, so I can show you that. I can go from the beginning here. So again, go to administrators, food nutrition services. And here in the quick links section, you'll see reimbursement rates. It's the second to last one. And you have your national school NSLP, reimbursement rates, school breakfast program, after school snack, special milk program, and then down here is the cost of donated foods section. Sorry.
Can you show them the SFSP also?
Oh,
It's right there,
Ye-
that link at the top.
Oh, sorry. Just went, sorry. My internet is slow or the website, so I'm trying. Okay, so yeah, you can find your SFSP meal reimbursement rates if you're operating SSO during school year 21-22 are located here, and did that download? Oh, here we go. So here are your SFSP rates for that. So did you want to talk about that, or do you want me to, Ellen, more here, or
No, just more to get those, and just know for SSO, you'll get the self-prep rural sites, regardless of if you're self-prep or if you're rural, everyone will get those self-prep rural site rates.
use here? Okay, so I'll stop screen sharing in case there's a question that I have not seen that someone else needs to answer. Kayla, are you seeing, are there any other PLE questions that I might be able to answer that I just haven't seen that have been updated? Sent
Yeah,
in the
could
chat?
you just repeat one more time? If you're only doing SSO, you're not required to do what?
Correct. Okay. So yeah, if for school year 21-22, your school district is only operating the seamless summer option at your buildings, then you are not required to complete this PLE tool that I went through for this 21-22 school year.
Cool. Thanks, Chad. I'd like to ask if Darla or Amy, could you capture the chat? So if we have any unanswered questions, that's copied. But I'm going to go ahead and ask John French. You said you have another question. We'll take this as the last question before we close out today. So John, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, Kayla, I was just going to double check. In our applications, I've had that submitted, and I guess I'm just wanting to make sure because it still shows that like the seamless summer option is pending approval, and I did do the 2021 one, and I believe in it does show approved. So am I safe to assume that we are approved so that I can go ahead and announce to my parents that it is definitely everybody's going to be eating free for the year, or do I need to wait until that is finally listed as approved?
No, you don't need to wait. It's just in the middle of processing. Our specialists are working now to get those approved, but that doesn't, just because it's pending doesn't mean that SSO isn't available to you. It's just, we have 700 schools to get through. Approving all those applications takes some time. So yeah, you're good to go the second we opted into that SSO waiver, so you can advertise without that application technically being approved.
Okay, and then just one more question in regards to the when we say if you're only doing SSO, I'm assuming that if people are doing SSO, that's all they would be doing. So I guess I'm wondering what the situation might be where they're doing something else besides, you know, doing SSO and something else, I guess, where you would need to do the PLE.
I haven't seen it yet, but some schools, like school buildings, could still do NSLP. Like say your high school is doing NSLP, but your middle and elementaries are doing SSO. I couldn't find a reason why that would happen, but I mean, it's an option.
Okay, all right,
So
I understand.
that's what we meant. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thank you. So again, we captured all the questions in our chat, and so we'll get those out to our specialists to help you get answers to those questions. Thanks again to Chad, Pam, and Ellen for presenting today and doing all the work you did for your presentations. be sure to join us next Tuesday for a town hall that will discuss more details about the child nutrition emergency operating cost reimbursement and additional questions that you all have about how's the first week or two of school going. So look out for that webinar link this upcoming Monday at 1 p.m. And thank you for joining us today, and have a good rest of your Tuesday afternoon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.